Good morning, folks. Well, we've got another one of those days, at least the promise of a day, according to the weatherman, where we're going to have more snow and more cold weather. But we can't complain because out here in the heart of America, we're just so much better off than some of the folks in other sections of the country. We've only to pick up the newspaper, listen to the radio, and hear about storms that are ravaging the East Coast and the West Coast that's too dry, especially down in Southern California. Well, out here, we're storing up moisture that we may need. You and I know very well, sadly, before the year is out of the way. A report I like to get, that I am getting, however, is we're getting quite a bit of snow out in the western part of Kansas. And that is so necessary if we're going to get a good wheat crop out there because we got off to a late start this year. Well, yesterday I was down to Concordia, Missouri, attending the annual meeting of the local cooperative association. Quite a successful meeting, and they had quite a successful year. You know, there's about 300 farmers in that organization, and through that organization, they market their grain, they buy their feed, they buy lumber, some other incidentals, and they had a gross business this year ran way up in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, a net profit to those farmers of $45,000, most of which I saw distributed yesterday in dividend checks. It was a very good meeting. I enjoyed every minute of it. And by the way, while we're talking about meetings, you folks up in Sabetha, Kansas, I'll be up there this afternoon to speak at the annual meeting of your cooperative egg organization. That's an organization through which farmers in that locality market eggs, and one of the few such organizations out in this section of the country. And you folks on the radio, I'll tell you about their meeting tomorrow and some of the things that that organization has done. Well, the main topic right now, of course, topic that farmers are interested in. They were interested out at that meeting yesterday, and according to the paper and the radio, there's great interest being shown in it in Washington at the present time, is whether or not we're going to have meat rationing, whether or not price ceilings will be returned. And right before we discuss the domestic situation as far as that's concerned, Canada, as you know, has restored it. But Belgium, on the other hand, is giving it up. What are we going to do? Well, time only will tell. And this week in Washington, we're having a series of hearings. It's a special five-man subcommittee led by Senator Ralph Flanders of Vermont, who wants to put through a law, he's a Republican, to set up rationing machinery. Now, here at the hearings this week, the first will be led off, of course, by the Agriculture Department officials, led by Secretary Anderson and Assistant Secretary Charles Brannan. The general opinion is they're coming out in line with the administration's policy, asking that price ceilings be restored or the machinery set up so if it's necessary that we have rationing again, it can be done. And then following will be heard the livestock producers, feeders, and farm organizations, and then meat packers and distributors. All will, of course, plea for the country not to restore controls again on livestock, and they have several good reasons. You and I have talked them over. I don't think we want to go into them now again. But I know how the packers are going to stand. They're coming out against it, very definite against it. And then after they get through, then the other side will have their innings, so as to speak, with consumer and labor organizations expected, we say expected because we do not know definitely how they stand, to support the bill. And the chances are they'll not get a chance to be heard until the forepart of next week. Now I want to take just a minute to talk to you a little bit about Staley's Hog Uncles. The purpose of this feed is to help you out, those of you who are short on grain. It helps you feed your hogs economically. A complete hog ration. That is, they've taken all the ingredients that hogs need. They've taken grain with its carbohydrates and its fats, proteins and minerals and vitamins, and that new condensed fish soluble. Mix them all up together thoroughly, press them into pellets, sack them up, and then they're all ready to feed to your hogs. You don't need to feed anything else with them. Just Hog Uncles, plenty of clear drinking water. And you'll find that combination will produce more pounds of pork than will straight corn. That's not hearsay. We're doing it here on the farm at the present time. Now, what does it cost? Well, hog uncles cost about the same as corn on a bushel per bushel basis. But let me repeat again, you don't feed it with grain, you just feed it straight. It's a complete feed, not a supplement. And it is available as close as your local Staley dealer is to your farm. Say, I know a lot of you are going to be interested in the release put out by University of Missouri as to just what the situation is as far as farm products are concerned over the next month. As you recall, every now and then we report from their farm outlook. And here's the current situation as described by their economists. For grain and feed, they say, appraising the future of prices is very difficult in light of the presence of many unpredictable factors. Leveling off of prices of feed grains and wheat and higher prices of feed concentrate appear most likely. You remember last month in their letter, they had this statement that very often we find that the highest feed prices are those right after short crops. In other words, they thought at that time that maybe we saw the grain market as high as it was going to go. And now they think there's a possibility of a leveling off. In cattle, the price spread between the lower grades and choice-fed cattle, they say, is likely to narrow moderately, as prices of the better grades will tend to weaken, while prices of lower grades will tend to strengthen. Steady prices are in prospect for feeder cattle. Now, that price spread between the lower grades and choice-fed cattle, they say, repeating again, is likely to narrow. That's a condition we know that's gone on through the years. In the spring of the year, we get less of the low-grade cattle. We get more, comparatively speaking, of the top grade, with the result is that the top grade usually works down and the lower grade works up. That's the time of the year when one usually can most profitably sell their butcher cattle. They're cattle that have been fed on silage, the cattle that are not truly finished cattle. Now, in hogs, they say hog prices are expected to continue their upward trend into March or early April, when a level of $30 appears reasonably certain. Now, there's just a lot of us that have thought and hoped that the hog market would get up to $30 before that. And you'll notice it's crept up and got up to $28.50, $28.75, and then it seems to meet consumer resistance, and down the market comes again. But one of these days, the feeling is that supplies will get shorter and shorter, and that usually occurs in March and early April, and then when that point is reached, we'll have the $30 hog. That's the opinion of the economists. Whether we'll have it before then, well, there's the question. Lamb prices, they say, are likely to show strength over present levels during the next 60 days. What's behind that? The fact that there's not so many fed lambs out at the present time, and also that this is the season of the year, as you may recall, when western Kansas and Oklahoma and the Texas wheat pastures usually disgorge their lambs and bring them to the market. But we didn't have those wheat pastures this year, and as a result, the lambs are not out there, and so it's short supplies for the next 60 days. For dairy prices, they say that prices of milk and butter fat are expected to decline seasonally, but remain above the levels of a year earlier, and a little further decline in egg prices is expected, considering the likelihood that government support prices are expected to be about 5 cents per dozen above last year. Now, that's the picture of the market. As more information is available from time to time, of course, I'll bring it to you. Now, getting back to my sponsor's product for just a minute, you may wonder how Staley's Hog Uncles can compete with corn in price. Several factors. The Staley Milling Company buys their ingredients in large quantities. They buy it at different points in the country, wherever prices are most attractive. They take advantage of price differentials between the various ingredients, blend these ingredients in one big central mill, and that's one reason why they're able to produce a feed that is actually better than straight grain at almost the same price corn sells for on today's market. Now, Hog Uncles are not an emergency feed. At all times, Hog Uncles are a better balanced and more productive feed than the best corn ever raised. And remember, you buy Hog Uncles at the store of your local Staley dealer. So long now, folks. But to you folks up in Sabetha, Kansas, I'll be seeing you this afternoon about 2 o'clock.